Most of us probably already know that most creepypasta stories aren't actually real, but are there any creepypastas based on real-life events or phenomena? In a word, yes. Yes, there are, and they're wonderfully effective stories because of it. The world can be a wonderful place. However, it can also be a pretty scary one. These stories, with their roots in reality, tap into some of the more terrifying aspects of the world in which we actually live. So, grab a friend, turn off the lights, and prepare to be scared to scroll any further. Here are 7 of the scariest creepypasta stories based on real life. Good luck sleeping tonight. Capgras Delusion. One of the more popular motifs in creepypastas is that of the doppelgänger, a double or evil twin of a living person that seeks to replace the original. The truly terrifying creepypastas of this sort find a mother or father sensing that the child they love dearly has been replaced with something sinister and unholy. Fighting off an evil version of yourself might be disturbing, but battling a horrible entity with the face of your child can be soul-crushing. One of the most powerful creepypastas of this type is only 2 sentences long. I begin tucking him into bed and he tells me, "Daddy, check for monsters under my bed." I look underneath for his amusement and see him, another him, under the bed, staring back at me, quivering and whispering, "Daddy, there's somebody on my bed." A very real and very terrifying disorder known as Capgras Delusion is at the root of many doppelganger myths, legends, and creepypastas. The delusion typically manifests as part of another underlying mental disorder such as dementia or schizophrenia and causes the afflicted to react, often violently, to loved ones that they believe have been replaced with an imposter. Blue Whale Challenge. Blue Whale creepypasta is one of the most sinister among the list. The Blue Whale Challenge was reported to be an online suicide game aimed at teenagers which set 50 tasks over 50 days. The story of the Blue Whale Challenge began with Rina Paunkova. On 22 November 2015, Rina, a teenager living in southeastern Russia, posted a selfie of her in black scarf wrapped around her mouth and nose. She is sticking her middle finger up at the camera. It looks like it's covered in dried blood. The photo's caption read, "Naya bye." The next day, she took her own life. Rina Paunkova's death was discussed in a certain type of chat room hosted by Russia's largest social network, VKontakte. It was in these groups, where the line between fact and fiction was often blurred, that users posted feverishly about Rina. In some instances, they lauded her for ending her life. And shortly thereafter, Rina's story merged with other stories of teenage suicide. On Christmas Day 2015, 12-year-old Angelina Davidova killed herself in the Russian city of Ryazan. A little over a fortnight later, so did Diana Kuznetsova, a teenager from the same city. When the parents examined the online accounts left behind by their daughters, they found something curious. The 2 girls were part of similar online groups. In these groups were drawings of Rina Paunkova, posts about suicide, and numerous mentions of blue whales. Journalist Galina Mercelieva in Novaya Gazeta, an investigative newspaper, suggested that inside certain online groups, some of them with enigmatic names like Ocean Whales and F-57, existed a game. In this game, so-called curators would set players 50 tasks over 50 days and is monitored by an administrator. With completion of each task, subsequent task becomes more dangerous. On the last day, the user was instructed to take their own life. 130 children have killed themselves between November 2015 and April 2016 because of their participation in these groups. It would come to be known worldwide as the Blue Whale Challenge. Soon the panic spread outside Russia. In November 2016, 21-year-old Philip Budakin was arrested, charged with inciting teenagers to suicide. He told Russian media outlet St. Petersburg.ru, "There are people, and then there is biodegradable waste. I was cleansing our society of such people. Sometimes I start to think that it's wrong, but in the end, I had the feeling I was doing the right thing." Robert the Doll. Rather than causing a scene after being fired by the Robert Eugene Otto family for practicing rituals native to her home country of Haiti, a servant gave a lifelike doll to the family's son, Robert, and left without incident. The boy loved the large doll and named it Robert after himself, even dressing it in his own clothing and pretending to feed it at dinner time. Soon, however, the boy's relationship with the doll turned sinister, and he began referring to himself as Gene because the doll did not want to share names with him. When Mr. Otto passed, Gene inherited the house and eventually wed. Gene and his wife eventually went insane and passed of unknown causes, leaving Robert alone in the house, where he would terrorize anyone who would happen along. The story of Robert the Doll is particularly disturbing because it was an urban legend and ghost story long before it gained new life on the internet as a creepypasta. It's unknown how much of the legend is based on fact and how much in fantasy, but the doll itself is real, and you can visit it at the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, FL, where it supposedly continues to terrify people to this day. The Russian Sleep Experiment Creepypasta. This truly gruesome creepypasta holds that the Soviet government conducted experiments on political prisoners in the 1940s designed to test the limits of human endurance. The prisoners were promised their freedom if they volunteered for a sleep deprivation experiment and were exposed to a gas stimulant that kept them awake for 15 days straight. The subjects became addicted to the gas and devolved into madness and barbarism, their bodies ripped apart by the strain of the experience. The exact impetus for this story is unknown, but there are numerous real-world examples of governments experimenting on human subjects. The British military exposed their soldiers to mind-altering drugs like LSD. The Americans tested mustard gas on unwitting soldiers, and Japan's Unit 731 tortured and slayed an estimated 3,000 mostly Chinese and prisoners during WW2. The researchers in Unit 731 were never brought to justice following the war because they received full immunity in exchange for turning over the collected data to the Soviets and Americans after WW2. The Alice Killings. A mysterious serial slayer terrorized Japan for a decade, leaving a trail of uniquely gruesome murders in his wake and two telltale clues: a playing card and the name Alice written in the victim's own blood. Thus goes the premise of the Alice Killings, a creepypasta about 5 unsolved murders that has been told and retold so many times that it is often mistaken for genuine crime news. The actual slayer on which this creepypasta is likely based is all too real. Unfortunately, though his slayings took place far from the islands of Japan. Alfredo Galán Sotillo, an officer in the Spanish Army, slayed 6 people and wounded 3 over a 3-month period in 2003. The slayings became known as playing card killings because a playing card was left at the scene of his crimes. He's now serving 142 years for his crimes. The expressionless isn't real, but the photo that accompanies it is. Numerous creepypastas contain characters with expressionless faces, but the most spine-chilling of them all tells the story of a Jane Doe admitted to Cedars-Sinai Hospital in June 1972. The woman had smooth, pale skin, and her face was utterly blank and expressionless, like a mannequin. She had the body of a kitten clenched in her teeth, and no one could pry it from her jaws. The staff was terrified of her, and many of them left their stations. Several of those that remained to care for her fell victim to her powerful bite. The story is almost always accompanied by the eerie photo above by Anthony Armstrong Jones, 1st Earl of Snowdon, titled Student Nurses with a Waxwork Patient from his 1972 book assignments. In this case, the story is made up, but the photo is all too real and likely causes the hairs on the back of our necks to stand up because of the uncanny valley nature of the figure and innate revulsion humans have to near-human figures or robots. A more recent example is the disturbing, expressionless robot Tara in the anonymous YouTube video titled I Feel Fantastic, which has amassed nearly 20 million views and inspired a whole new strain of creepypastas. The Axeman of New Orleans. As the story goes, a French photographer and inventor named Edouard Martel took thousands of photos during his 2 decades, traversing the United States at the start of the 20th century. Often, Martel would hide his camera and set it up to automatically take photos while he observed from some distance away. This way, he could capture life on the streets without the artifice of posing his subjects. In this case, Martel captured not life, but the end of life in the form of the mysterious Axeman of New Orleans, a brutal serial slayer who was never caught. Martel apparently discarded the photo as useless because it was not of good enough quality, but had he taken the time to study it, he might have become famous for catching the slayer, rather than remaining unknown his entire life. This creepypasta is different than most in that Edouard Alfred Martel was a real person, but a French spelunker and not a photographer. B. The photo that the creepypasta is based on is real and nearly 100 years old, but likely not taken by Martel. And C. The axeman of New Orleans was a very real slayer who took the lives of 6 people during an 18-month period starting in 1918. Described by police as a foul demon from the hottest hell, the axeman even sent a letter to the Times-Picayune newspaper saying that he would fly over the city at 12:15 a.m. on March 19, 1919, and would spare anyone playing jazz music. The character was famously depicted in the 3rd season of American Horror Story.